The unfinished broadcast. In a small, unremarkable town, the citizens had always held a peculiar fascination with the old, ivy-covered building that housed the local television station, WQDI. It had been decades since the station had aired any new programming, but the flickering neon sign outside remained a haunting remnant of its glory days. Kids gossiped about the ghostly specter of an old TV host who never left the set, Chuck Darlow, a name forgotten by most, save for a few elderly locals who recalled the good old days of Saturday morning cartoons. One chilly October evening, a tight-knit group of friends, Ella, Jake, Tara, and Max, decided to sneak into the decrepit station. They had heard the legends about unaired episodes still buried in the archives, and the thrill of discovery beckoned them like moths to a flame. Armed with flashlights and an adventurous spirit, they climbed through a broken window at the back of the station. Inside, the air was stagnant, filled with dust motes swirling in the beams of their lights. The halls were lined with aging posters of forgotten shows, and the studio set, now shrouded in cobwebs, loomed menacingly ahead. It was eerily silent except for the occasional creak of the building settling. "Look," Tara whispered, pointing towards a door marked Archive. Excitement bubbled in their throats as they stepped inside the dim room. Rows upon rows of old film reels sat on shelves, each labeled but faded with time. Max trotted to a shelf at the very back and began pulling boxes down haphazardly. "Here, I found something," he shouted, drawing the others to him. The old, dust-covered box was filled with unmarked film canisters. With a mixture of glee and trepidation, they decided to take a couple of canisters back to the studio, excitedly guessing what kind of bizarre programming the station had tucked away. As they set up the projector in the studio, a crack of thunder rumbled outside, the sound echoing ominously through the room. They loaded one of the canisters labeled simply, Episode 47 inches, and, when the flickering light finally caught the screen, the friends were faced with the visage of Chuck Darlow. He greeted them with his trademark smile, but something felt off. The cheerful tone was laced with a hint of desperation, and the script was skewed. "Welcome, kids, you're going to love this episode. But remember, it's all just a game." His voice crackled, distorted despite the clarity of the image. At first, they laughed nervously. The episode spiraled into a series of increasingly bizarre scenarios, featuring disturbing puppets and ominous chants that seemed to claw at the very fabric of reality. The friends exchanged uneasy glances as tangible fear slowly began to seep into the room. Suddenly, the cheerful images warped. Chuck reached out from the screen with outstretched hands, and the room filled with an unsettling static. With each flicker of the projector, a sensation of despair and dread thickened in the air. This wasn't just an episode, it felt like an invocation, a bridge between this world and something darker. "Let's turn it off," Jake shouted, but as he raced to the projector, it emitted a boundless light, drawing everyone's eyes back to the screen. Chuck's face twisted, his smile snapping into a grimace of rage. "You can't leave," he screamed, his voice now a high-pitched shriek that echoed through the room. The friends' surroundings began to distort. The walls pulsated, and shadows elongated, warping the once familiar set into a grotesque version of itself, a twisting mockery of their reality. They stood frozen, entranced by Chuck's malevolent gaze. The room spun as laughter, deep and guttural, reverberated off the walls. The next scene unfolded. A series of distorted images of themselves, trapped behind the screen. They saw their own expressions become marked with horror, stuck in an endless loop of fear and panic. "Get out," Ella screamed, breaking the spell. They finally bolted, shoving each other through the door, but the hallways twisted like a labyrinth. Every turn led them back to the studio, where an endless cycle began anew. In that moment of desperate pursuit, Ella spotted a small window. "There, let's go." Without hesitation, she wedged her way through, dragging Jake with her. Max and Tara followed, but as Max squeezed through, the shadows reached out with icy tendrils, pulling Tara back inside, her screams echoing in their ears. They stumbled into the night, hearts pounding, adrenaline fueling their escape, breaths mingling with the cold autumn air. But the laughter, a malicious echo, followed them into the darkness, lingering behind like a ghost. Weeks turned into months, but Tara was never found. The remaining trio became shadows of their former selves, plagued by nightmares that glimmered with mockery and despair. On Halloween night, they returned to WQDI, the air thick with dread, wanting to end what had begun. The flickering neon sign buzzed ominously, casting a sinister glow on the old building. They burst through the doors, determined to destroy the projector, to end Chuck's game. As dawn broke, the haunting laughter still echoed through the halls, and that night, one more lost episode was added to the archives of WQDI. The Forever Lost.